when the pastor's son fell in love. A forbidden gay romance. The air in Harmony Creek, Alabama, hung thick and heavy with the scent of honeysuckle and unspoken judgments. Sun-drenched Sundays were the lifeblood of this town, the hymns swelling from the white-steepled church, the heartbeat of the community. Elijah, Pastor David's son, knew this rhythm better than his own. He'd grown up in its cadence, the Bible verses woven into the very fabric of his being, destined, as everyone assumed, for a path of righteous service. He was the perfect pastor's son, kind eyes, a gentle demeanor, and a voice that could lead the congregation in soaring melodies. Yet, a quiet dissonance hummed beneath his polished surface, a melody out of sync with the expected harmony. He felt it most acutely on Sundays, surrounded by the fervent faith, the unwavering certainty, knowing his own heart held a secret that would shatter their carefully constructed world. That secret began to take shape the day Caleb arrived. Caleb blew into Harmony Creek like a gust of unruly wind, challenging the still, stagnant air. He was in town, organizing for LGBTQ rights, a lone, defiant flag in a sea of conformity. He set up a small table outside the local diner, handing out pamphlets printed with rainbow flags and bold slogans. Whispers followed him like shadows, laced with disapproval and suspicion. Elijah, drawn by a curiosity he couldn't explain, found himself lingering near Caleb's table after church one Sunday. Caleb, with his vibrant green eyes that sparkled with conviction, and a smile that could melt the deepest frost, was everything Elijah wasn't. Outspoken, unapologetic, and vibrantly, openly himself. Their first conversation crackled with nervous energy. Elijah, stammering slightly, asked a polite question about one of Caleb's pamphlets. Caleb, sensing a flicker of something beyond polite curiosity, engaged him with a passionate intensity that made Elijah's heart race. "This isn't about being different just for the sake of it," Caleb explained, his voice a low, earnest timbre. "It's about basic human dignity. It's about love. Something I thought this town, built on faith, would understand." His gaze, sharp and insightful, met Elijah's directly. Elijah, caught in the orbit of Caleb's fiery spirit, felt a strange sense of recognition. He saw in Caleb a reflection of the dissonance he felt within himself, amplified and made brave. He felt drawn not just to Caleb's words, but to the raw honesty that emanated from him. Secret meetings began to blossom in the cracks of Harmony Creek's rigid structure. Stolen moments in the hushed quiet of the town library, clandestine walks along the moonlit riverbank, hushed conversations in Caleb's rented room above the bakery, the scent of cinnamon and forbidden longing filling the air. Caleb told Elijah about his life, the struggles, the triumphs, the unwavering fight for acceptance. Elijah, in turn, hesitantly, tentatively began to unburden himself, speaking of the weight of expectation, the suffocating pressure to conform, the confusing longings he had buried deep within. "It's like I'm living a script someone else wrote for me," Elijah confessed one evening, sitting beneath the sprawling branches of an ancient oak tree, the Bible Belt sky ablaze with stars. Caleb reached out, his hand gently taking Elijah's. "You don't have to, Elijah. You get to write your own story." His touch sent a jolt of electricity through Elijah, a spark that ignited a fire he had long denied. Their connection deepened with each stolen encounter. They talked about faith, wrestling with scripture, finding new interpretations, questioning the pronouncements of condemnation Elijah had heard preached from the pulpit his entire life. Caleb challenged Elijah's ingrained beliefs, not with scorn, but with gentle questioning, opening up new avenues of thought, new possibilities for himself and his faith. Elijah, in turn, offered Caleb glimpses into the heart of Harmony Creek, the underlying currents of kindness and community that existed beneath the rigid surface. He showed Caleb the genuine faith that motivated many, even if it was often misguided when it came to love like theirs. Their love grew in the shadows, a fragile bloom pushing through concrete. It was a love fraught with danger, a forbidden fruit in the eyes of their community. The fear of discovery hung heavy in the air, a constant undercurrent to their stolen joy. Whispers about Caleb's presence and Elijah's increasingly frequent absences began to circulate. Disapproving glances followed Elijah after church. His mother, her brow furrowed with worry, started asking pointed questions. His father, the pillar of the community, noticed the shift in Elijah's demeanor, a quiet intensity that was both unsettling and intriguing. The tension escalated when Caleb's small advocacy group planned a peaceful protest at the town square, directly challenging Harmony Creek's staunchly conservative stance. Elijah knew this was coming, but the reality of it, the public confrontation, the inevitable backlash, filled him with dread. He confided in Caleb, his voice laced with anxiety. They won't understand. They'll see it as an attack on their values, on their faith. Caleb cupped Elijah's face in his hands, his green eyes unwavering. And what about your values, Elijah? What about your faith and love? You deserve to live authentically, just like everyone else. That night, lying awake in his childhood bed, the familiar hymns of his upbringing echoing faintly in his memory, Elijah faced a crossroads. He could continue to live in the shadows, denying a part of himself to maintain the facade of expectations, or he could stand with Caleb, stand for their love, even if it meant risking everything. The sermon the following Sunday was about judgment and righteousness, delivered with unwavering certainty by Pastor David. Elijah sat in the pew, the familiar words now laced with a painful irony. He glanced across the aisle, his gaze meeting Caleb's, who had bravely come to the church, a silent show of support. In Caleb's eyes, he saw not judgment, but unwavering belief, a belief in him. As the final hymn swelled, Elijah made his decision. He knew the cost might be immense, the path ahead uncertain, but he also knew he could no longer deny the truth in his heart. After the service, as people milled about, shaking his father's hand and offering polite greetings, Elijah took a deep breath. He walked towards Caleb, who stood near the entrance, a quiet island in the sea of after-church chatter. He reached Caleb, took his hand, and intertwined their fingers, the simple act sending a ripple of stunned silence through the crowd. Whispers died down, replaced by gaping stares and murmurs of disbelief. His father turned, his face a mask of shock and hurt. His mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. The entire congregation seemed frozen, suspended in a moment of collective disbelief. Elijah, his voice trembling slightly but gaining strength with each word, spoke into the stunned silence. "This is Caleb," he announced, his voice carrying through the church hall. He's important to me, more than words can say." He looked at Caleb, his heart overflowing with a love that defied definition, defied expectations, defied fear. The silence stretched, thick and heavy. Then, a wave of murmuring broke out, confusion and anger swirling in the air. Some turned away in disgust. Others stared with open hostility. Pastor David, his face pale, stepped forward. "Elijah," his voice was strained. What is the meaning of this?" Elijah held Caleb's hand tighter. "It means, Father," he said, his voice clear now, resonating with newfound conviction, "that I'm choosing love. Love that some may not understand, but love that is real and true and mine." He knew the fallout would be immense. He knew he was likely shattering his father's heart, challenging the foundations of his community, and stepping onto a path filled with uncertainty and pain. But in that moment, holding Caleb's hand, feeling the warmth of his touch, Elijah knew he was finally living his own truth. He had chosen love over conformity, authenticity over expectation, and in the quiet courage of that forbidden love, under the judging gaze of Harmony Creek, Elijah, the pastor's son, had finally found himself. The path ahead was undoubtedly arduous, the consequences unknown. But as he stood hand in hand with Caleb, facing the storm, a fragile seed of hope bloomed in the rigid soil of Harmony Creek. The hope that even in the heart of the Bible Belt, love, in all its forms, might just find a way to break through.